We can start. Anita? So that's what I do, and I've done that for 20 years. We are starting. Yeah, we're going. We are going live. Sorry. Yes. No. We have time. Yes. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. बहुत ज़्यादा ना. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yes. So I welcome you all. We are commencing with the first session of Gyan course on education, concept, pedagogy and innovative practices. I welcome Dr. Anita Charles. You already have got familiar with her that she has come from Bates College, US, Maine, and her expertise is in education practices, adolescent education, etc. Now, before we start, I just want to apprise you that this session is not just going to be theoretical lecture sessions. We are going to have a lot of questions in our mind. We are going to address a lot of questions in our own individual ways. We are going to share our observations. You can bring up something which you do not agree with because you are in education right now. Then we have certain quizzes, we have certain games, and we have certain pedagogical practices which we will be practicing. And yes, of course, theoretical sessions will be here. So how we go is that I am initiating today's lecture. The first two lectures would be purely conceptual, but a lot of thinking is going to be there behind it, right? And requesting everyone to switch off their phones because we are live, we are being recorded. So there shouldn't be any disturbance in while recording, okay? So, as you have seen in the brochure, you must be familiar with the objectives of this course, and I'll go ahead with the first session, which is about education. What do we mean by education? What is the scope? Why do we need education? Think about it. When I'm talking, or when Anita would be talking, keep thinking at the back of your mind. Bring in your own thoughts, okay? And what are the functions of education? And in all, who all are the agencies of education, okay? Not just in formal way, but as well as informal, because education starts from the day one, okay? So you're welcome to take notes, as well as I would request, take a lot of thinking, less of pictures, but take notes. It always stays with you when you are writing something, okay? Now, what do we understand by education? If epistemologically we see what education is, it is, see, there is a difference between education and there is, and literacy. If you are literate, you are literate in 3 hours, as per the understanding, right? You know the 3 hours: reading, writing, and discussion. And education is something which is working on your entire personality, where you are grooming yourself, where you are preparing yourself for a larger social purpose, where you are creating, where you are innovating, where you are imagining, where you are having certain thoughts behind your actions, behind your emotions. So it's not just what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how you are emoting or expressing yourself is education. So education can be verbally or epistemologically divided into e, which is out of, and duco, educo. Duco is I lead. So somebody who's educated leads the others, shows the path to others. That is what basically, just by the terminology, we understand by education. Leading, say in imagination, say in knowledge, sharing of knowledge, and not just keeping it to yourself. So therefore, education is a process. And let's focus on the words which are coming in this understanding. What is a process? A process is something which is always continuous. It might not be having any dynamic character, it might have, but process is something which keeps going on. So education is also something which keeps going on throughout, from beginning till your life is going on. Every day is your observation day. Every day is where you are communicating something to the others. So it's a continuous process. And let's not think where we are right now age wise. Let's think from the perspective of a child. So for a child, it's a continuous process still, and we all have a child inside us, right? So it's a continuous process where we are identifying what is the purpose. We are identifying inner potentialities. We are identifying or building capacities. We are identifying what a child is capable of. So we are giving a free kind of environment. And this philosophy, if you go deeper into the approaches of education, it is the philosophy of naturalism. And one of the Indian proponent of naturalism was Rabindranath Tagore, and we'll have a different session tomorrow morning about that. So naturalism says to let the child be in a complete open environment. It could be a garden, it could be a room, not controlling somebody, so that the potentialities can come out by itself, as we say generally, that the personality of a person. But personality is not just personality. It has potentialities, it has capacities, it has capabilities, and those need to be identified and encouraged to get developed. And what are these potentialities? In response to the external environment where you are. Okay, so education means different for different people, because we come from different backgrounds, we come from different cultures. As Anita is coming from a different region, we are coming from different regions. So education means different for different people, but it might lead to something which we all are trying to find out, right? It might be based upon observations which might coincide or overlap. So, my first activity or an exercise, mental exercise to all of you is create your own definition of education. We will not take up any education definition given by educationist, a philosopher, or a sociologist, but try to develop your own education definition of education based on keywords. How do we do that? Just write the keywords or key phrases and bring it together as a statement, as something which describes education. So right now, if we have to go ahead, you can just note down that this is the exercise which you will be doing today in the break or post lecture. Okay, you will create your own definition of education. I'll help you with keywords. Education as a purpose. You can bring in what is the purpose of education in your definition. What can be the aim according to you? What do you hope through education? What does it accelerate something, or is it a never ending process? How does it change belief systems, values, norms, attitudes? How humane it is? How does it aim towards global citizenship? Bring in all these, and you can leave some and bring in together and make your own definitions. Bringing people together, authenticity, autonomy, capable of taking responsibilities, learnings, attitudinal values. So these can be the keywords where you can make your own understanding or definition of education. Now, I'll be putting a lot of questions for you to think in between the lectures. What can one bring to this moment or situation where we are sitting together? What one thing can you bring? I'll quickly answer on your behalf, and maybe in future questions you can come up. You can bring your thoughts, right? You can bring, because you're continuously thinking, you can bring your observations, maybe from yesterday or 10 years past. So whatever has happened to us since childhood is a part of our education, is a part of our learning, which we will be applying somewhere or the other. So this is a very essential part of education process. What do we mean by authenticity? Now I'm focusing on certain keywords which I have given you to form your own definitions. What do we mean by authenticity? By authenticity, we mean adopting an essential task of finding what one can be. You are true to yourself, right? If you're thinking of something, what you want to do or what you want to become, or how purposeful you can be to a larger society, community, or a group of people, That is what we mean by authenticity. Something essential which needs to be your part, where some utility can be seen, what you can do for self and then for others, what you see through your own eyes, what is your own observation, and you are truthful about it when you are reproducing it as a knowledge creation, or when you are utilizing it for certain kind of concepts brought together. So what you observe, what you want to be, how you want to give a purpose to your life is authenticity here in terms of education. Now, coming to the role of teacher here, this is about a lot of yourself. Where does the facilitator comes? The facilitator has a life impact since the beginning of education, right? You must be remembering your facilitators. I won't be saying teachers quite often, but facilitators, because teacher is a little harsh word. But facilitators are one who are facilitating the process of education, or people who are taking you on that path or showing you openness towards learning, knowledge creation. So they have a huge impact on the process of education because they create a certain kind of energy in the classroom, outside, if they are taking you out. So that certain kind of spirit, that certain kind of energy being created by the facilitator is the crux of education, where you might like the process or you might shy away from that process. I'll not say you might dislike, but you might that would give you a kind of encouragement, orientation into that process, because certain kind of energy has been created in the class. So it is, and that energy is contagious. You look forward to that facilitator's class, and you might not look forward, or you might have absence in the class, right? Because you do not like the energy of the class. So facilitator's first role is to create that energy with the students. Okay. Now I'm just reading something. According to Houston Smith, an educationist, a classroom is a kind of a weather system. Link it with the energy which I have just said. The facilitator is creating an energy, so that energy is creating a weather in the classroom. So the classroom is a kind of weather system. Sometimes it is thunder, sometimes it is sunny, sometimes the weather is, the climate is spring, but it is beautiful, blooming. So it depends on which teacher is coming and what weather is in the class. Okay, so linking the agent facilitator with the environment. And who are the receivers? The receivers are students. And we look towards something called student centric education. These are the people who we are creating this environment, who we are having this facilitator. But are we really focusing on what student centric education is? We have to give a thought to it as facilitators. Of course, not the students, but you can also come up with a lot of observations that, can we have this, can we have that, because this is my environment, because this facilitator who creates an energy is for me. So can I have a say in it, right? Okay. So this slide we are concluding in a while. So try to find out the fulfilling meaning of education, learning which should coincide with the basics of human nature. And when we have to think about the basics of human nature, let's go back to our childhood. What were the basic things which we used to like and which we used to run away from? So those basic things which brought happiness to us should be the objective of our life. How we want to do, how the process has to be to create a kind of energy, create a kind of likeness in me towards that process called education. Now, John Dewey, you must be knowing an educationist or educational philosopher, John Dewey. His education theory talks he gives a technical definition of education. He says, reconstruction of an experience. Now, when you are reconstructing an experience, you are bringing in your own observations as well. You are observing that experience from your lens, and your lens can be not just a single lens, but it can be a multitudes of lens. Your own experiences, you are influenced with your peers' experience maybe, or you have seen a movie, you have read a story, and a lot of lensing when comes. So it can give a psychological lens, it can have a sociological lens. When a lot of lenses come together, it is more precise, or you can have, it has a beautiful picture which is more understandable to you, which is more closer to your way of understanding. Okay, so he says reconstruction of experience, which adds to the meaning of experience and which increases ability to direct the course of subsequent experiences, because no experience ends at one point of time. It is always a continuous overlapping process where one experience leads to another and leads to another. And as the three purposes of or need of education, as I said in the beginning: action, thought, and expression, this all links together based on experiences, your actions, how you think, and how you express. That freedom, that energy is based on your experiences, how you interpret those experiences, and they are continuously educating you through day by day, day by day. Now, I'll leave you at a question and move to another slide. How is the teacher seen? I'm using the word teacher here. How is the teacher seen in context to understanding education as an experience? How do you see a facilitator coming here? And that facilitator doesn't have to be a formal teacher, but somebody outside the school environment as well, who has been guiding you, or who you look up to, or who gives their perspective to you, and you value that perspective. What is the need of education? Coming to the second aspect of our first lecture, we have done the meaning of education. What is the need of education? It formulates thoughts, it gives a structure to understanding. The first step is identification. You identify certain things, or you identify certain happenings, your observations, and how scattered they are when you are trying to see things at your end. But education helps you in structuring, formulating, and based upon your formulation, it enables a person to see if certain things out of it can be implemented. Say habits, say good manners, how they will have examples, very basic examples to understand. Okay, but and implementation, and of course execution, carrying them out, acting on them, right? But what is most important out of these? How enabled through education are people to benefit from it? The most important aspect of it is that how somebody is benefiting out of it. Students coming to an institute, they have an idea why they are coming to an institute. They start taking their sessions, their lectures, their learning experiences. Based on those learning experiences, they start implementing certain things which are expected from them, say their assignments, etc. But the larger question is, what is the benefit? What is the takeaway? What are they benefiting from it? So that is where the need of education needs to be. Are they able to understand why this curriculum structure is there, why the plan has certain points or modules which need to be covered as syllabus, how these learnings are going to benefit them. So this question is a constant question when we talk about need of education. Are they able to participate in their full capacity? Are they able to identify their potentials based on those learnings? Maybe all courses are not of their interest or not identifying those, but majority of them, if they are doing, they try to see, or they are able to see, that the need of education is being served. So the question is, are they utilizing the facility to their benefit? This is up to the students, to the learners, without missing on special factors or special aspects of education which might bring out their potentialities. That needs to be realized, that needs to be self-observation. Through self-observation, that needs not to be missed. So education is needed to understand and implement self development. It is goal oriented, which could be related to health, which could be related to certain kind of learning, care, say child care, or sharing or care among yourselves. Or if we think on a larger perspective, say population control, study of censuses or mortality rate, infrastructural development, urban development, what are the benefits which are coming out of it if we are talking about higher education? So better access and awareness to healthcare can be one of the benefit, which educated people spread to faraway regions, semi-urban or rural regions, and that is where dissemination starts happening. So the need of education is not just for self-awareness, but to disseminate it further to people who might benefit more from it, health wise, education, infrastructure, financial knowledge, right? So, services, immunization, etc., life expectancy, etc. So, larger goals are more community oriented, society oriented, nation oriented. And if you must be having an idea that education, as what goal education has, the goals are actually very much decided or based upon what the political goals or national goals are. Educational goals are very much similar or alienated likewise, right? So you can have a very good example where you can bring rural population, rural areas, which benefit from or which develop much later, but when these learnings are taken and they are tried to they try to the people try to make them aware towards what are the government policies towards rural healthcare, financial literacy, education, etc., infrastructure development, literacy rate gets better, and you can put in a lot of examples where development has happened, where backward regions have come. Especially a very good example is agriculture. Agriculture, where we can see that starting from the information or knowledge about weather to the soil quality. We just look up and till down, we have several factors which we see need a lot of study, and that awareness is spread to the farmers, and so how societies or associations, farmer associations are made to spread such. So there are various examples where you can see how education benefits the larger population. Second purpose of education is empowerment, making people empowered, and not just women or rural people, but empowerment is, what does it mean? It is bringing people of diverse background together. It is, and the basis of this bringing people together of diverse background is education, bringing them on common grounds towards equal participation and towards reduction of certain aspects which are regressive for the society, like poverty, unemployment. However, it has been observed that the education system of most developing countries acts to increase rather than to decrease income inequalities. It's a big debate. And education is also seen as one of the aspects which might increase inequalities. It is a debate. So we'll also have certain critiques in between, which we cannot just have a blind eye towards how education might also create inequalities in terms of social mobility is one of the big example, and we'll be doing it. After empowerment, one of the need of education is sustaining healthy democracy. Sustaining education strengthens democratic values in society. It makes children from younger age aware about the values, the principles of democracy, especially related to women, to poor. Democracy works on the principle of it works on the principle of decentralization, and decentralization needs a lot of educational basis where responsibilities or participation can be seen in an active way. So therefore education is a prerequisite, a very important prerequisite for its functioning, democratic functioning. Next is peace and stability. Education also works in terms of peace and stability. It promotes peaceful coordination, coexistence. It provides reasoning, rationality, acceptance of someone else's view, even if you disagree. So education gives a broader outlook towards what others have to offer in terms of opinion, and women have been playing a very important role in peaceful coexistence, and education plays a very important role in bringing women to that platform where they are agents of peacekeeping or coexistence. Then need of education is also felt in terms of reforms towards women education, roles in taking ahead the torch of education, maintaining peace, mitigation of conflict, gender equality, social and gender equality, in fact, and not just for women, but for men as well. So, why does social inequality flourishes? Why is it that inequality is a very regularly seen cropping up anywhere, wherever there is a kind of disorientation or less attention? It is due to illiteracy. Inequality breeds on illiteracy, social beliefs which are not based on rationality, and education helps in bringing rational views. So values go through a lot of positive transformation due to education. Biases get reduced, prejudices get mitigated as more and more educated people are together. So, social reformers and the impetus they gave to education, we have very good historical examples. And yes, gender bias is you can say fought or is acted upon by equalizing educational rights or access opportunities to many. Coming to the scope of education, which is divided into three ways. Scope of education based on different learning environments. So, one is formal education, informal education, and non formal education. So, formal education is a controlled environment where pupils or students come. They follow a kind of structural rules and regulations or structural limits as per the course curriculum, as per the environment, sitting environment, as per their facilitators, and the goals which are to be achieved through that. So, by scope, we mean the extent of functionality, how far the education or within which boundaries that education is functioning, how different learning environments shape education, help in access or means to education, modes of education. By education, we generally think of a formal schooling environment, the first thing which comes to our mind. But education is about acquiring knowledge, which is broad based. So there could be different environments and not just schooling or an institute of education. However, we'll start with formal education, which enforces a systematic process of learning. It is a hierarchical structure, and it is chronologically graded. It has a grading system. It has a generalized academic study, specialized education based on maybe specific training, skill development. Learning experiences are vertically or horizontally structured. Like we have three courses here, but we have three batches in chronology. Vertically means primary to university education. Horizontal education caters to all forms of education, general education, technical, professional, or vocational. It is time framed in terms of duration of a particular stage, like primary and secondary, and time schedule for teaching learning activities. There is a specific timetable. The students have to be present in the class. So teaching learning strategies here in formal education include classroom teaching, practical experiences, laboratories, field trips, participative co-scholastic activities, etc. There is a central body of operation, preparing curriculum, develops guidelines for implementations, conduct examinations and certifications, diplomas, degrees, whatever the course is for. What are the learning outcomes? The learning outcomes are achievement based, informal system. And the formal education assessments are there through formal evaluation system as directed by a centralized body, in our case, university. So this is formal education system. What are non-formal education? The similar to formal, but noticeable different is in terms of flexibility. Formal education is less flexible because you have to set up for like semester system. But non-formal is having a flexibility in planning, implementation as per the student's pace. Flexibility in terms of time schedule, classes, duration of the program, examination, education after entering job fields. Even people who are working, they can go for non-formal education. It is a continuous education as per the pace of the students. Do we say that non-formal education is more student-centric? No, it's not that. But it is as per the pace or availability, because somebody might be working, somebody is occupied in certain other things. So their education is at their pace. So flexibility in terms of the pace, based on the pace. It could be online education, it could be open learning, school distance education, etc. What are the main characteristics of a non-formal education? Planning and implementation of short-term programs or courses for a small limited group of number of students. Courses are offered through distance learning. There is flexibility in duration of program and its completion as well. Say somebody misses the exam, they can give it next time because it is according to their pace, and it can also address a special learner group, say physically challenged or nursing education, but online or distance education, professional development or development of basic education, basic literacy, etc. Now, what is not informal education? It is the social and cultural environment provided by the first peer groups, the family, the friends, etc. So think about it, the informal. So it is mostly about also what you have been observing as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager. Maybe you are standing, I'll give you an example, maybe you're standing on a crossroad. So what is your observation? You are observing continuously. That is also a kind of informal education. You might look at someone and you might think that this is what I might do or I might not do. So that is a kind of learning which you are self-observing and learning by yourself. It is unstructured. It is without any restrictive environment, and it can be a desirable learning. It includes, but it has to have a purpose. For example, you watch someone smoking a cigarette. You are observing someone smoking a cigarette, but you might think that I am not going to take up this habit because it is unhealthy. So that is also a kind of learning, but it is a informal learning. Okay. Second aspect of scope of education is based on study or knowledge. What is being studied? What is the knowledge creation? Liberal education, professional education, and vocational education. What does one understand by liberal education? So we are a department here of liberal education. The objective here is where students have freedom to pick their own subjects and make their own combination. Okay, fine. That is liberal education, but what is the purpose? The purpose is learning, pure learning. It is not specified, narrow, scientific, or you can say, if we have to compare it with science subjects, that it is not a very specialized, narrow learning of certain specialized subject, say in STEM streams. But liberal arts aims towards knowledge creation, understanding what life is, where you can understand life situations, life problems, and think about their solutions in terms of individual problems as well as larger problems. So it is about knowledge creation, new practices of knowledge sharing, generating, generating new structures of intellectual purposes, intellectual learning. Yes. So, coming to vocational education, it refers to education which prepares a person for a particular vocation or occupation. Very easy to understand just by the term. It gets mentioned as a part of higher education as early as Wood's Dispatch 1854, as well as it is mentioned by Mahatma Gandhi as a very essential aspect of basic education, 1937 Vardha scheme. He emphasized upon craft-centered education, where every child is supposed to learn a skill which they might develop eventually, different kind of skills. So areas of vocational education are largely seen as agriculture, engineering, technology, health, etc. And professional education is about so specialized body of knowledge and skills, which is continuous updation of the knowledge and based on practical learning, laboratory learning. The third aspect of scope of education is the mode in which education is provided. And this is the last aspect. The first is what we are doing right now, face-to-face education. It is generally a part seen as a formal education, classroom learning, okay? And as early as it started as Gurukul system in ancient India. And we still are following that because personal interaction always stays. So face-to-face, the characteristics of face-to-face education are regularity. There has to be a regularity in such classes. It has to be in a controlled environment. However, it has been kind of debated by naturalist philosophers, as Tagore says, that let them be out, let them sit under a tree and not within the four walls. But yes, it has to have a regularity, a controlled environment, say a school or a college. Specifically designed curriculum is very essential for face-to-face curriculum. Otherwise, it would convert into a kind of conversation and chit-chat. So it has to have certain points which need to be covered. Various stages of education need to be covered. Usage of different methods of pedagogy, techniques suiting subjects. But there is a question which comes to my mind, does it really support, or are we practicing various ways of teaching in the classroom teaching when it comes to face teaching? Where there needs to be certain innovative practices here, certain interventions of pedagogical practices here, some new ideas where we can bring in certain new aspects to it. Now, here in face-to-face education, teacher verbally communicates through lectures, but do you think is it really student centric? Because if it is a one way lecturing and the students are on the listening part, then it is not student centric because they might wander off mentally after 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So, to make the class interactive, it has to be really interactive in true sense. And face to face education needs to be a not a lecture kind of thing, but an exercise where active participation is also seen. However, these face to face sessions are, I'm talking about characteristics, yearly, semester wise patterned. There are planned lessons. Does it focus on covering the syllabus? Or do you think that covering the syllabus or completing the syllabus is more essentially to be seen, or learning process to be made more enjoyable so that it stays with the students? So learning process needs to be more enjoyable. Learning needs to be enjoyable so that that will ensure that the learning stays with the students. Assessment is done formally, and it is a certificate or degree kind of assessment. Report cards are made in face-to-face education. Now, do you think that it needs a revisionist approach, the assessment and evaluation of students? Because all students are assessed on standard outcome. But there could be students who are not able to write well but speak well. So do you think that there has to be a revisionist approach? So we need to think about it. We'll talk about it. The second aspect is open or distance learning. Well prepared, quality learning material, self learning material. It is called self learning material, which is a part of, we are talking about characteristics. It has a support service of an association or organization. It's provided to the students, the support system. Varieties of methods are suggested. Media plays a very essential role in open and distance learning for transacting the curriculum, say print, audio, video, emails, teleconferencing, radio counseling systems, etc. And the third aspect of it is online education. With the help of computer networking, internet, and various online learning applications which we see today are used, and it is used for general or professional education, certification courses, diploma, degree levels like Swayam, MOOCs. Easy availability of internet and its wide use by learners has made it easy to get online resources through YouTube's Gyan Darshan, Swayam Prabha, etc. Can we think of a comparison between face-to-face, distance, and online learning? On all these characteristics, you can make a table of a comparison between these, and you can take the best practices out of it and see where we can have certain innovative practices jump or hop from one section to the other. Okay, let's go to the next. What are the aims of education? So, based on our learning till now, we can talk about certain aims and we can think about a question: what are the aims? Education provides a philosophy of life. It gives an understanding, a deeper understanding to what my individual life or your individual life you would like to view or have as. It gives you power, a power to wisdom. You become aware of your own existence. And second point, you become aware about human nature. You educate yourself to accept how others are based on their nature. And this is a student centric aspect of which needs to be paid more attention by facilitators, that each student is an individual in itself, right? So the facilitator needs to deal with the students who are the learners who are here as a part of the aim of education. The next one is faiths and beliefs. It transforms, it transmits, or revises your faith and belief or value system. The culture gets transmits from one generation to another. But during that transmission of culture, which is a collection of values, manners, beliefs, norms, they might also get revised if they are not progressive. It forms or it helps in the formulation of an ideology as well as taking that ideology ahead to the future generations. Socioeconomic problems and issues can be seen as challenges, can be worked upon with new solutions, innovative solutions. Then the culture factor is here, where education helps in cultural transmission. And finally, knowledge exploration. Now, I would like you to see or completely upside down the chronology of these aims of education. Should it be that what my individual life philosophy is, or the aim of education should be, first and foremost, should be knowledge creation? And coming to the individual perspective at the last, but the larger, broader way of understanding education needs to be where we collectively think of all, including us, and not just us, should be the aim of education. So these are predetermined goals before one starts an activity or any kind of self activity. I mean, it inspires an individual to attain these goals through appropriate ways and engaging with others. Based on these aims of education, we have functions of education. Education helps in the propagation of philosophy of life. These are completely taken I'll be reading these because these have been formulated straight from the aims of education. Understanding humans from varied perspective, acceptance is the larger aim or function of education, accepting others' point of view, accepting their culture, their regional identities, etc. Values of truth and ahimsa, being non-violent, have been better understood through the aims of education. Ideologies determine the educational aims. Democratic ideologies help in propagating democratic ideals of education, versus autocratic political systems have a different kind of education systems. Education helps in identifying and understanding socioeconomic challenges, and education helps in preserving and transmitting cultivation and civilizational and cultural heritage, as well as new information exploration is helped by education. How are these aims relevant? What do the aims of education have their relevance as in Indian context? You can draw this diagram. Visuals and diagrams are always easy to memorize. The vocational efficiency, it prepares you for employability, and which every student looks for. Where is education taking me? What the larger benefit is, okay, I'm benefiting. But whether I'm going to get employed after doing this course or degree or not. So employability is one of the major factors in terms of Indian context. Self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency in terms of livelihood, whether I'll be self-sufficient to have a livelihood through this education. Second aspect is knowledge. What is the intellectual growth, interpersonal relationship, level of life adjustments, behavior modification, self awareness towards self as well as others, and leading to social growth, community, peer groups, etc. Third aspect is complete living, child centric, self preservation, preservation of cultural values and beliefs, social and political duties, understanding of that, as well as being aware of what our fundamental duties are, what our political duties are, what our social duties are, which are beneficial, as well as what should be done during the leisure time is a part of education. Even the leisure time is not out of the purview of education. So overall development, physical, social, emotional, spiritual development, creating harmony where there are several diverse cultures, civilizational history, essentiality is towards establishing harmony, cultivation of such moral values which sustains that harmony, virtues of truthfulness, honesty, goodness, purity of purpose, courage, reverence for others creates and helps in harmony, and that comes through education. Character development. Educational thinkers think of this aim as supreme. Cultivation of certain human values, development of attitudes and habits helps in character development. It helps in the next realization, which is self realization, realizing individual potential, capacities through educational journey. And it is a continuous process where you are identifying and creating new things in yourself, or becoming self aware of new potentialities which you might have. Cultural development, knowledge sought for conventional values, refinement, aesthetic sense, and concern for respect of others' cultural identity. Citizenship. As you must all know that National Education Policy 2020 largely focuses on global citizenship. It works as one of its aim as education towards developing global citizenship or citizen partnership among students. So quality is beneficial to the society, knowing their duties, functions, obligations towards society, trained to develop clear thinking, respectivity to new ideas, clarity of mind and speech, writing, and true patriotism. What are the individual and social aims? Education has social group aims as well as individual aims. Individual and society are mutually interdependent. social contacts and relationships essential for individual development, sense of obligation, loyalty to the community and citizen. A balance between this leads to mutual social and individual aims. Leisure, enjoyment, and recreation, activities beneficial to the individual as well as society. Wise recreation, reading, theater, knowing about folk identities, giving balance to it gives balance to and makes aware about others' identities. It gives balance to mental and physical development, artistic, moral, and aesthetic development. So NEP also confirms with these goals, with these aims of education, as it aims towards all-round development, development of scientific temper, national cohesion, independence of mind and spirit, education for equality, etc. So these were in terms of Indian perspective. Coming to the last aspect of our lecture today, agencies of education. So these are the four agencies of education: home, school, community, and media. At home, we know our first teacher is our mother. The childhood is most impressionable age, where not just mother, but the entire peer group at home with the child as well as their interpersonal relationships have huge impact on the kind of personality a child is developing. So the social psychological environment at home needs to be suitable, whereas we see that the home as an environment is a very invisible environment. We do not, it is based on observation, and one does not see it as invisible because a lot of learning goes in an invisible way at home. It is also called invisible pedagogy. So socialization is the first form of education, where small components, pockets of components are developed, small spaces of capacities, capabilities are seen in the child, and smaller role performances start occurring with the child. And that is the first step where society's culture is seen to transfer to that child's environment, individual environment. So it is also, home is also seen as a place where preservation of social inheritance is done. What is social inheritance? Civilizational or cultural inheritance. So that social inheritance is preserved very tightly within the home environment. It also uh, helps in the process of social change, and we'll talk about what is social change. And a lot of internalization happens in home environment with the child. So when the basic way or method is of internalizing, what is internalizing is seeing and learning, not being told specifically, which is in a controlled environment. So when a lot of internalizing is happening with the child, it is of utmost requirement that the environment at home should be very suitable. It should be specifically child-centric. So what are the activities which are happening at home? Acculturation. Acculturation, transmitting of culture, cultural values, home values, sense of belongingness, the we feeling that we are together, the feeling of togetherness, sense of belongingness, propagation of cultural beliefs, moral learnings, and certain educational functions as well, developing interest in first steps of learning, being motivated to go to school, to a formal learning space, development of personality, interpersonal relations, not just within, but relation with father, mother, and also learning between them how the relation is and the other people. Value orientation starts at home, and it is mainly an unconscious method. It is not a purposely done thing, and it affects the pattern of behavior, the way the child thinks. So child's first intellectual abilities, aspirations, and commitments are first acquired within the family. Let's come to the second agency, which is school. It is a formal place of learning. So What are the functions here? Basically, you see in the second row, we have the development of commitment, capacities, and human resource allocation. These are the three basic functions of school as a formal learning place. So it generates commitments and capacities for what? For future adult roles, maybe as a professional or as a non-professional even future. It is motivationally and technically, intellectually adequate to perform as adult role. That an adult, a student when he becomes or is ready to go to the adult role should be motivationally, technically and intellectually ready to take up that adult role. So that is what is commitment. There are two components of commitment: implementation of broad social values that you are acceptable in the societal purview or arena, and second is performing specific roles within the society. So one is implementing a broadened structure of the society. Two components of capacities are there. One is competency skills. Capacities are what are your potentialities. One is competencies or skills involved in the performance of individual roles, and the second is role responsibility, understanding the responsibility which comes with the role. Sincerity towards the purpose is linked to capacities. The third role seen as the formal agency school as is allocation of human resources within the role structure of adult literate society, giving prepared or skilled human resource to the society. This depends upon basically basic ability, what basic skills one has, and second, achievement in specific field of study appropriate to the role. One is basic, one is advanced, as simple to understand. Now, what are the educational functions of school? There are two kind of educational functions. One is manifest, and the second is nurturing. What do we manifest as an educational function? The first is acculturation, where you are transmitting cultural values from one generation to other through formal teaching. A very simple example is celebrating festivals in school or days of national importance. This is a kind of acculturation. It is a part of our culture which we are from school times till the senior university level. So through formal teaching of history, history gives you a lot of acculturation. Understanding art and craft, or taking the school kids to museum for a field trip, learning literature, reading literature classes, theater, folk arts. So these are where acculturation through a lot of aspect is seen in liberal education. Now you'll see overlapping starting happening as we are going more complex into the concepts. So these are liberal arts education rules, and we see a lot of acculturation happening through these aspects. Then learning about civilizational progress at various stages through history lessons is also a part of acculturation. The second aspect is socialization. Socialization is where actual behavior patterns are formed, and they are considered not just as behavior patterns but social skills. Learning social skills, such as when you are coming to school or when you are coming to your college, you learn how to be patient and listen to others in a classroom. So, patience, courteous behavior, character education, honesty, sincerity towards the purpose, and where a very essential role is played by the facilitator. The teacher turns as a role model. If you have a person who you interact every day and has a sincerity of purpose, has a strong character, has good presentability in class and outside, you consider them as you start considering them as your role model, and you try to bring in certain aspect of their personality in your behavior. So teachers are good role models here. Basically, what one person ought to do in specific situation or context is also a kind of socialization. The second educational function of school is emerging. The first is manifestation, and the second is emergence. These are basically seen as around circling around purely educational issues. So, manifestation was about acculturation and socialization, and emergence is about what is a larger understanding of issues, problems, or challenges which we see around us in larger environment faced by an individual or a group of people with reference to family problems or how life problems, mental health problems, etc., work related stress, uh, focusing on larger community challenges, for example, poverty, employment, crime. So, various disciplines, psychology, sociology, education, even history, political science cover these, or academically, these start addressing these issues in the curriculum. The second point is of social competence, where with scientific and technological interventions, day to day life has transitioned at a very fast pace. We know that. We have access to a lot of information, and people or others have access to information about us. And it is a continuous ongoing process. So, this requires a commitment. It requires a commitment and an ethical behavior, a competency for effective and adequate social interaction as well. So, social competence in terms of the pace which technology has provided now is very important. Example, uh, it also gets covered in the aspect of social mobility. If we have to understand it, we can put two lenses together, one of psychology and sociology. Say you watch a reel, it impacts you psychologically, and you're part of that group, right? So psychology and sociology come together when you have to deal with as something as simple as a social interaction with somebody completely unknown or maybe a larger one. So such competencies need to be studied through community responses, role plays. I'm talking about within the school, the functions which can emerge, which can happen. How do we deal or how we learn through role plays, imaginative creative writing, dramatics, creating a dialogue based on a situation by students, or circle time interactions, as simple as that, sitting together and talking to each other based on what have been the experiences in the past week on social media. And people can come up with good solutions, right? So that is also a kind of role which school can play as an emerging as a emerging role. Point 3 is new knowledge dissemination. And when we talk about new knowledge, what is behind new knowledge? Behind new knowledge is curiosity, an ability to question and think how to get engaged in this exercise of curiosity, to keep on that, to keep burning. I mean, the curiosity has to be a burning question always. It should always be alive as a fire in your mind, I mean to say. So, curiosity towards new ideas, towards new thoughts, and having a vibrantly imaginative mind, the way you think, the way you study, while studying, creating a visual in front of your eyes, right? And researching, reading a lot, finding what is the applicability of what you are reading or what you are talking to each other, in creating solutions to live together and to see problems as not problems but challenges to solve. So, sharing and transmitting is the role of school, where a lot of minds come together, and there should be a lot of talking and communication, exchange of information, exchange of knowledge. So, new knowledge dissemination. How do we disseminate? Various ways of dissemination should be found out. Point 4 is about equal opportunities. Schools are a place which can provide, or colleges are a place which can provide equal choices to succeed, especially keeping in consideration first generation learners who are coming from regions which where access to education has not reached. So first generation learners, physically or visually challenged people. Let's think about people who face more problem or more challenges than people who have easy access to something called education in such environments called school. So how we can work towards it is compensatory education programs, remedial classes, special educations, scholarships, aids, as well as seen as a part of constitutional obligations. Next is sex and family education, which shouldn't be episodic, which shouldn't be incidental. It should be through peer interaction. It should be through peer interaction. It represents and it should address child psychology. It should address questions around health, hygiene, wellness, and disease. Sex education should be a very essential part of the curriculum. Functional literacy is also an emerging function of school, where functional literacy is more comprehensive concept. It represents meaningfulness, relevance towards social survival, because functional literacy is very much required by all commonly. It also is a next step towards having wisdom, skill, attitude, and values. It empowers people towards effective social participation. And personal and shared growth should be the aim towards it. Global outlook and scientific temper, tolerance and respect towards others, racial identities, gender identities, social identities, respect towards the community outlook, and we feeling need to bring social cohesion for peaceful existence. And accepting respectfully diversity of human race, developing a deeper sense of who we are collectively. Coming to the third aspect, community as an agency. So the larger bubble shows the essential functions, then educational functions, and rest of the engagement. What are the essential functions of community? See, community gives a larger base to how educational institutes should form their ideology around. Community gives goals to these educational institutions, and it is a very mutual interdependent relationship about within the educational institutes and or education and community. So largely the functions are continuance and furtherance of functions of family. Community is a larger, or you can say blowed up vision of a family, which is the smallest social unit, and community is a collection of larger families, number of families. So community helps in making arrangements for educational infrastructure, for educational establishments of institutions, and community functions, say collectively coming together for any kind of function, is one of the examples where these goals are seen to culminate. Community gives a purpose or gives a direction to what kind of skills should be developed among the learners, what should be the conceptual understanding or learnings, habits, motives, agendas, and value bear effect on the development. For example, how students come together as small societies or clubs in a community is where they start developing or learning peer behavior, socialization, etc. So community also plays a very important role in management of educational institutes. Say the trustees, group of trustees are representatives of community. They assess the needs of children. They assess the aspirations of parent community. So they are a link between students, the stakeholders, the students, the parents, and what should the education aim at. So parents have aspirations or they assume things as per the education, how education should be beneficial to their children, and students definitely they need a lot of fun while learning. So all these things have to be taken care when the management of education institutions have to be there. So assessing the needs of children in the school, home, school, and communities show determined and sustained commitments backed by continued dialogue between the three stakeholders: Technical as well as financial assistance is also provided by communities. What are the modes of interactions? Media, discussions, meetings, parent and teacher educational trainings, etc. What is the relationship between school and community? The relationship is of an understanding, and community gives directions to education. What are the goals, larger goals of communities get directed, and the education is designed around those directions. Like, for example, India is a diverse community, various regions are there. So various community identities are there: tribals, village people, cities, urban centers, etc. And each smaller pockets of regions are having schools. So based on those communities' directions or regional identities or cultural identities, the school ideologies are also framed. So the curriculum must contain, propagate largely new ideas, values, and behavior. And how community engages students is also very essential. The community needs to engage students on the ideals of brotherhood, the feeling of togetherness, and consideration for others. The last, media as an agency. We are very well aware that how social media has become a very essential and intricate part of our lives. And socialization and acculturation has become through this means largely. Rather than meeting face to face, people have switched to video conferencing, etc. So why not use media as a source for information dissemination as well, and not just socialization? So it has a great potential to reach larger people, and media coming individually to each one's home. So tremendous amount of knowledges or information is getting gathered, is processed, is disseminated in most desired and effective manner, reaching isolated regions through satellite-enabled programs, establishment of virtual classrooms, virtual labs. Increased level of awareness is one of the results, understanding and appreciation of physical, biological, social, educational, and cultural factors. Now, what are the education functions of media? It is a very potent tool of education. It has numerous applications essential to formal as well as informal system of education. It is used at individual as well as mass level, addressing group of people. Media complements the traditional methods of teaching as well, should be used together with the conventional ways of teaching, and we can bring out certain innovative practices where media can function in a more dynamic way. So home, school, community, and media, these together can be supplemented, reinforced in a holistic manner to receive knowledge, to have experiential learning, and better dissemination of knowledge sharing. As a last part of this lecture, I could not refrain myself from putting a slide on facilitator, the teacher. So we have discussed these points where the facilitator is creating a kind of climate, creating a kind of energy in the class. So I just wanted to put this slide again where they are helping in self-awareness, in orienting students towards observation through multiple lenses of observations. They are regulating conducts, they are considering students to address certain issues as not just issues, but bringing solutions to them, working up their thinking minds, etc. So read this slide and we are done for this lecture. Thank you. Now, the remaining time, I would encourage students and participants to have any Q&A, question and answers. If they have points of discussion, remarks, comments, we can have a communication session where not just straight question answers are there, but we can have discussions. I would also invite Anita to be a part of this discussion if she has certain inputs to share.
We're getting a small break. We have a small,
Post this, yes.
what's that?
We have a break after this.
I mean, are we moving into the second part right now or?
After the break,
After the break?
yes. The second lecture, yes. After the
How
break.
much time do we have for right now?
Uh,
Discussion or thoughts?
for discussion,
Yeah.
I think 15 minutes we have.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I see. So we're, and then we can break after that.
yes. Yes, yes. We are starting with the second session and the recording is live, so we need silence. Yes. Okay, welcoming everyone to the session 2, lecture 2 of day 1, which is about the role of education in socialization, social change, social mobility, and social stratification. Now, these four concepts are, you will be very easily observing a lot of examples around you, where what all environments or peer groups you have. So, questions are going to come to your end. Keep thinking. I'm not going to ask you to answer, but keep thinking. That exercise should be on. So, starting with what is socialization? Socialization comes from the word social, society. It is a kind of workable capacity to interact in or get accepted in the society in a manner which is okay with everyone, or you can say workable or trained into acceptable manner. You are trained to be accepted as a social person, is socialization. So every child from, we are going back to the lecture 1, every child from his or her informal environment, home environment, starts learning the process, starts getting initiated into the process of socialization. And what are the basics of it? Adaptability, communication, respecting elders. So therefore, coming to a formal definition, the process through which one learns to internalize the values and norms into oneself, or mode of learning to survive in a society, is socialization. So basic word is survival. Surviving in an acceptable manner or getting accepted, trained to be accepted in the society, is socialization. And the very major function which highlights this process of socialization is learning of social values and norms. Basic norms, observe any child who is between 2 to 6, and you'll see major socializing activities he or she is doing. Somebody is coming to home, or he or she is going outside, in the garden, in the park, in the school. You will see them performing those all. You'll check the list like very quickly, because they are doing it like somebody is really getting trained in that, right? So to observe, talking more deeply about socialization is, how do we see what is happening under this umbrella called socialization? To observe within the mind deeply in order to make it intrinsic. Example, manners. They stay with you. Once you have adapted certain manners and you have an understanding as a child of something which is acceptable or non-acceptable, acceptable things stay with you intrinsically. They become intrinsic to your behavior, intrinsic to your personality, and rest of them you filter out gradually as a child. So the first stage of learning is the family. The environment is family. Similarly, seemingly, there are inborn attitudes in a child, or you can say inborn attributes, not attitudes. Attitudes are acquired. Inborn attributes, these are determined, and these can be molded even. They can be transformed. These can be molded through the process of socialization. So, inborn attributes can be molded, like learning social norms, values, attitudes, behavior patterns. Why patterns? Because they are repeated again and again till they are corrected, or till they are in acceptable form. Now, what is the question? Are there not gender differentiation in the process of socialization? Do you see role segregation in the process of socialization when a girl is being initiated into the process of socialization or a boy? Don't we see gender discrimination or differentiation? Think about it. Okay. Coming to the second aspect, does all learning lead to socialization? All kind of learning? See, education is universal. It is happening every moment. It's just that are we receptive towards it or not? Okay? So, at a given point of time, since it is universal, but all learning doesn't lead to socialization. So, at a given point of time, an individual is a member of not just one group but various groups. Right now, you must be a member of, say, more than between 7 to 10 groups. Okay? Hidden friends, known friends. I see a lot of smiles here. So a lot of groups are there, right? And these groups can be categorized into formal and informal groups. Okay, so and they also vary in size, smaller size, larger units, etc. So thus there are multiple roles to the membership of various groups. How you are associated to a group defines your process of socialization or maybe nil socialization, what you're learning as socialization. Socialization here is not social relations or being social to people in a group, but are you learning that process? Is there any new learning in terms of socialization? So thus it is not only just norms, attitudes, behaviors which we learn. Education helps a lot here. It helps you in categorizing accepted and non accepted category. Aims of socialization, what are these? Internalizing the group norms. Every group you are associated with has certain norms. Okay, they have certain norms which need to be followed, and if you do not, then you kind of start getting disassociated naturally from that group. So internalizing those norms, can we say that socialization is a process of social control then? Because you have to abide by the social norms, so that social group is kind of controlling you as an individual. So, do you see socialization as a process of social control? Put that question in your mind. However, socialization helps here in three ways. It strengthens group solidarity, togetherness. So, you can highlight or you can write the keyword solidarity. Second, it fosters desired development. Underline desired here. What is required? Not development or fostering, but desired. What is acceptable for the group as well as an individual? And lastly, conforming to the group expectation. Again, here a question comes to my mind, is it also leading towards social control? Nobody, and control is a word which one wants to break free out of it, right? So conforming to certain norms or group expectations also tries to link me towards kind of social control. Now, how does it happen? How does it, all these three functions of socialization happen? The first and only which I will be discussing, because we cannot go very deep into the theories of socialization, stratification, mobility, and change. We will cover conceptually what is required for this session. So, and we have to keep our focus around the keyword education, right? So, these three functions, strengthening solidarity, fostering desired development, and conforming to social group expectations, how does it happen? It happens through the transformation of knowledge. Transmission of knowledge brings people together. It brings solidarity just on the basis of sharing of knowledge. So, how does it start? It starts with thinking. One person thinks, he or she shares, various thoughts starts developing in chain. It's a chain reaction. Various thoughts develop in mind of an individual and individuals and people and so on and so forth. And it starts, that chain reaction starts spreading like a process of socialization. And it involves social solidarity, a sense of togetherness, conformity to norms, prescribed rules and values, these features starts showing, visibly showing. Now this is called conscious socialization. This is deliberate socialization, consciously done. Family in an informal environment and school in a formal environment plays the role here as agents. System of reward and punishment is there, even if it is a family or a school, and is applied to children commonly or uniformly. Now, what do you have to say about learning and learning through observation here when we are talking about transmission of knowledge, connecting it to socialization, certain norms, confirmations, and fostering, etc.? What kind of uh, knowledge dissemination is happening, or how do we say that learning and learning through observations? These learning through observations are explicit and implicit to the environment. These have explicit and implicit directions. When we say invisible pedagogy in family, or when we say conscious socialization or unconscious socialization, families do not declare that they are socializing or they are practicing this process of socialization. It is happening. It is happening naturally. So that it's not a declared training of a child, whereas in school, it is purposeful, it is declared. So here comes the implicit direction and explicit direction. Schools are having cognitive aims, purposeful cognitive aims, which need to be fulfilled within a time frame under a formal agency where the facilitator is there. Therefore, the socializing process within the secondary groups, such as schools, families, above are not families, schools and organizations are deliberate, they are conscious. Whereas in family, it is not conscious, it is implicit. And in schools, it is more explicit. And consciously, it is compared with that of the family, but it is more goal oriented, it has a more explicit purpose. However, the interesting part is both the processes, implicit as well as explicit, or conscious as well as unconscious, take simultaneously within different environments, but they are taking simultaneously, they are taking place simultaneously. So, this is a short understanding of socialization and education. The next aspect is social change, and in this slide, I have put a picture where you see, I could connect with this picture, I could see it as a classroom, and education is bringing a lot of hands up, maybe asking for a change or asking or putting their views up, right? And in this slide, I have put certain keywords or phrases which might indicate how education gets connected to social change. Now, let's talk about what is social change. Separately, we can understand what is social change. I'll give you what sociologist Wilbert Moore has said is that social change is a significant alteration. Alteration is a change, it's a significant alteration over a time in behavior patterns and even culture. And it includes change in norms and values, change in what needs to be changed in acceptable norms and values. However, this change is very slow, it's gradual. Let's take a historical example. 1850 or 1880, actively social reform started happening, and still we are in need of reforms, right? Those social reforms were basically around women, and education played a major role to give a base to all kind of reforms. And still, if we see, we are actually working on reforms and bringing in more of inclusivity. So it's a very slow, social change is a very slow and gradual process. It is slow if societies are not complex. Even in basic and simpler societies, it is slow because these simple societies or basic societies are traditional in nature. They are conventional in nature. They are ritualistic. They are based on customs. They have a history. They have social hierarchies. It becomes slow because of these factors: customs, rites, rituals, hierarchies. These are simple societies. Broad changes, which are seen as social changes, are three: physical and biological, technological, and cultural. What are physical and biological social changes? Say, based on racial evolution, or some race is having racial identities of different races. So you can think of several tribes, for examples, or comparing two races, maybe in Africa and say in South Africa. We have a lot of racial representativeness there, right? So take any country, you'll have a lot of physical and biological identities which are quite gradually grown. Technological changes. What are technological changes? I did not have a phone when I was in college, whereas my students are having an access to every kind of information. And yes, it is very much needed. It is very much needed. So these are technological changes which have brought in social change as well. People are better connected, but people are also vulnerable, so there are always positives and negatives to it. Coming to cultural changes, as seen as social changes, cultural changes, as I gave an example, that we have reformed to a very great extent. And yes, we know that the scope of reforms or changes are still there, but yes, we have brought in a lot of legislative regulations which have brought social changes and which have made it legit. Now, encouraging innovation in material and technological spheres has helped in bringing social change. So, how technology and material changes have played a very essential role in social changes is to be noted. What it involves. What do we mean by technological and material changes? Training, training of manpower, because we are talking about human resource. And when we are talking about this human resource getting allocated as one of the functions, education functions, when we were talking about human resource allocation of educational function of schools, here training is very essential. Skill development is the next step, focusing on certain individuals' capabilities or potentials, and then skill development. Challenging traditional attitudes is also very much required to bring in acceptance to technology, because tradition might have a challenge with technological developments. So challenging those traditional norms which are a hindrance. Promoting social mobility. There should be a yes towards social mobility based on progress which has been made based on training and skills. Somebody acquires a status in social society based on his or her education, based on his or her training, is a kind of positive social mobility. Vertical or horizontal doesn't matter. Now, there is a question. Think about a highly stratified society, okay, which has a lot of categories, stratas. Okay, think about a highly stratified society. Is it realistic to expect schools to inculcate strong egalitarian principles? Students or learners are coming from various sections of society. And I have told you to imagine a very highly stratified society. Now, school is working hard in putting this principle of inclusivity, in putting this principle of egalitarian equality of opportunities. But when after 5 hours of engagement, these learners leave that campus, they are back to their stratified society system. Think about it, how complex this situation is, right? So social change, and when we come to social mobility, it's really mind-boggling, because it's really tough to maintain a balance between these concepts, which are very dominantly existing where we are standing, and where we keep shifting our bases from this environment to that environment to that environment, and this keeps happening. So these institutes of education function within the stratified system. Schools, colleges, universities are functioning hard within the stratified environment, right? The community which is actually guiding the education systems in itself is stratified. So it's a debate. The dominant values of the society influence the organization of learning. The ideals are set up by community. We did that, right? Now, when the society itself is stratified, how far the school is going to save itself from not being an egalitarian environment? It's really a tough situation where uh, uh, where certain where we come up with these practices and how we can make it more inclusive and more participative. And here, I remember that there's something which I came across called change management experts. So when we are talking about how to fight situations which are tricky, which are complex, which are standing against each other, putting things in flux, we need change management experts. And why do we need them? We should become one. We should be the ones who should come with uh, an observation based expertise, which can be called expertise later. But if we can come ahead and give some simple suggestion and work as a change management expert, and okay, coming back to the nomenclature which is easily acceptable, reformers and not change management experts. Okay, so we need role of reformers here. We need to look back upon our educational philosophers who gave us many approaches towards making learning more enjoyable, and not looking towards how this environment is stratified, how this environment is prejudiced or biased, etc. Okay, so role of reformers and philosophers need to be looked back upon as agents of social change. Tagore, Aurobindo Ghosh, Vivekanand, and many philosophers, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Dewey, and many, I think Anita would be filling in from maybe philosophers coming from West. So society is working towards these goals, and educational organizations are working towards the society oriented goals seen as educational goals. Society articulates and brings forth these goals, whereas the educational institutes should also keep the thinkers and philosophers as their basis before applying blindly those goals given by the communities and societies. And thus, we can see maybe more egalitarian social change, more acceptable, if not egalitarian, but more acceptable. So, education system is largely conditioned by the prevalent socio-economic and political power structure. Whatever is the existing political power structure, it defines the socio-economic structure, and thus education comes in the purview of it. Okay, so its expansion, its growth, its development, and the finer details, curriculum, students, facilitators, is all tuned to the requirement of the social structure. Education thus can be seen as a social product, and not as a practice, but as a product. But here comes the question: how much weightage should be given to education as a product or as a practice based on a philosophy? This is this needs to be reviewed based on what learners are receiving, and not just on the basis of knowledge creation. What environment or what experience they are taking back to their homes. That experience need to be inclusive. That experience need to be egalitarian, where they do not feel sad, not just for self, but maybe for someone else, right? Empathy is very much required. So education as a social product and as a part of social system acquires a collateral relationship subservient to the political power structure and socioeconomic. So education is not supreme here, or is not autonomous here, which can decide for itself. But education, because it's designed as per the political structure and socioeconomic structure, it is seen to have a collateral position. So this needs to be maybe given a thought and reviewed. Next question is, what is its impact? Now we have talked about a situation, and the situation is debatable or is worth giving a thought. So next question comes to my mind is, what is its effect? How is it impacting? So the first and foremost impact, what comes to my mind is, it creates an imbalance. And wherever there is imbalance, there will be lack of harmony. There it creates an imbalance, it gives rise to dissatisfaction. And we are talking about from the perspective of learners here. Dissatisfaction, disharmony, and it can also lead to more severe repercussions or results. Say if the political power in a country is volatile, the structures are volatile, resultant socioeconomic structures are also dwindling, and they have its repercussion on our education system. So since it is dependent on having a collateral position, it is very much as per the situations, political and socioeconomic situations. Whereas if education is to a certain extent autonomous, then it has its own idols. Maybe we do not know, but there could be certain systems or countries where education system does not get impacted by how, no matter how volatile the political and socioeconomic structures are. So in course of time, what we see, education system may acquire autonomy, or maybe there are systems where it is to a certain extent, or it owns its own dynamics of development, and it might have its own structure, independent structure. So what we realize is that education has a dual character. It can or it cannot. There are a lot of questions right now in front of us due to the complexities and certain systems we might not be knowing, and the system which we are in, we know. So in all, whatever the character of education is under social change, we know, point number one, that education socializes, right? Even if under social change, it socializes. Education, second point, education has capacity to generate a spirit of inquiry. Spirit of inquiry and questioning the accepted norms. If we are talking about social change, questions have to be there. You have to question, why is this so? Then only you will need. If it is a status quo, that means there is no social change. That means people are not curious, people are not asking questions, they are not arguing, or they are not debating. So it also needs to ensure that there are certain level of inquiry, questioning the accepted norms, especially the dominant values and norms in the society need to be questioned, and in a very positive critique can be developed. Nobody is asking to revolt or rebel, but questioning is a good practice. Second, third, education maintains and mediates the cultural heritage. Social change can wipe off what essentially needs to be maintained. So education helps in maintaining that cultural lag. Say technological revolution which has happened could have wiped off a lot of things, but technology has worked in a very positive way in maintaining and preserving a lot of things. For example, um, archiving things, archival work, technology has helped greatly history. So education maintains and mediates the cultural heritage. It also ensures the cultural lag in society is minimized as it can be. Technology helps there. Then education helps in promoting social change and reform. People make other people aware about the anomalies or the backwardness or what things need to be changed, what dominant values need revision as per the times, as per the needs, because new generations have their new specific understanding of systems. So it exists in promotion of social change, reform. Education as an agent of social change can be seen in many Asian and African countries which were colonies. On the basis of education, they progressed. They brought in a lot of social and economic changes. This can be a very good example, a broad example seen across the continents. And lastly, an interaction between society and education is must. Why? The institution of education can modify social structure. It has the power to modify social structure. It brings meaningful social orientation towards required reforms. Orientation towards required reforms, making other people aware, having group meetings, associations, oral history associations, women's associations. Children are having their clubs and they are talking about their problems, society problems. They go to the, so it all starts very early, right? Education helps in mobilizing people, bringing them together, and making them understand the argument behind. So, who plays the dominant role? I'm concluding this slide. Who plays the dominant role? Education or other dominant structures of power? It is your perspective, how you view it. And the more attention to a kind of system you will be giving, that will be getting promoted because your attention is on that system. Say, I give attention to no, education has more power. So my focus would be entirely on education, and my thought process and my efforts would be towards that. But if I say no, the political power structure is dominant, so I'm losing half the battle there itself because I made it important in my mind. It could be important, but my attention needs to be solely on education as a change maker, as a tool to change for social change. So, who plays the dominant role is in our mind, in our observation. Education plays the role of facilitator. It accelerates and sustains the process. And never forget that a process is a system which continuously keeps going on. So it accelerates and maintains the process, which is continuous, by mobilizing, by dissemination, and cultivating knowledge, information, skills, values. So, education inspires a belief in progress, efficiency, achievements, and rationality. So, these four last keywords which I said, progress, efficiency, achievement, and rationality, can be seen as the keywords to social change. Social change can go in any direction. Let's see it in the direction of progress, efficiency, achievement, and rationality. So, next, we are talking about education and social mobility. You see that the points are in a kind of structure as steps. So, steps either go up or they go down, and social mobility is vertical or horizontal. Either people go up in the social ladder, down, or they shift on the same level horizontally. What is a functional perspective? It's the functionalist perspective, it's a theory. So, social mobility is change from one place to another, or one position to another. And it is a spatio-temporal concept in space as well as in terms of time. Let's talk about the theories. What is a functionalist perspective? The functionalist perspective believe in the, you can say, the good status quo of society. That it doesn't need change, whatever it is, can we make it best? Functionalist, utility. Okay? So they believe in expansion of formal schooling for efficient economic and social development, economic growth, and development of meritocratic society. So they said that education is essential and it has an interdependence with society. So if society needs to progress, education is an essentiality and it needs to progress. So they are having a very mutual relationship and interdependence. But this can only be possible when a society facilitates social mobility. Whether the social mobility is being facilitated for a positive outcome. Education, what is the role of education here, is of course positive, right? It is only when the society is mobile, they say, functionalist, that the education system becomes a vehicle for progress. So here they are indicating that the education is in a way dependent on society's progress. If society is progressing, education is progressing and can be seen as a tool for that progress. So there is interdependence, but in a way, education is being made subservient to the society's progress. The next, the specialization in education is the need of the labor force, they say, to match the complexities of the job, the modern industrial development. Education is needed. But here society is developing, it's progressing socially, economically, scientifically, industrially. So education is required for that progress to be maintained and have a continuity. Now, coming to the Marxist understanding of social mobility, Marx himself believed that a high rate of social mobility would lead to weakened class solidarity. He very essentially talks about class solidarity. Now, he says that if social mobility is vibrant, is happening, say people move from one position from an urban place to a city center. Now, whatever the class solidarity in terms of proletariat, bourgeois, industry workers, labor force, due to their education or their moving, their mobility, they have become a heterogeneous group of people in the city. What happens to the class solidarity? So he says that it weakens the class solidarity. Social mobility is not good for class solidarity. Classes would become heterogeneous, and this would reduce the sharing of similar backgrounds. The similar principles for solidarity would weaken the class identification and loyalty, since it would be difficult for mobile individuals to feel a strong consciousness with people who they are not associated prior to their mobility. So the kind of class members, the concept of class members completely gets defeated. So thus intensity of class conflict, their higher agenda and consciousness would also be reduced, because now they have become a mixed group in the city because of the social mobility. It gets reduced, which would be problematic as per the Marxist theory, and there would be no change to upside down the system of haves and have nots, because their real question is about the fight between haves and have nots. So Marxists say that social mobility is detrimental to the purpose of that conflict between the haves and have-nots. The society would not reform due to the social mobility. And there is a neo-Marxist understanding also to it, that the situation has already arrived in the West, where as a result of mobility in the form of education, skills, training, the nature of conflict has changed altogether. Already this is happening. So West has an open society, accepting people based on their credits, based on their merit. Based on their merits, they are acquiring positions. So in an open society, it is replaced by competition and not conflict. So conflict has completely replaced competition. Sorry, competition has replaced conflict to attain the best skills, the best potential, the best merit. In his words, quote unquote, instead of advancing their claims as members of homogeneous groups, people are more likely to compete with each other as individuals for a place in the sun. Neo Marxist view. And there is also an argument, quote unquote, although mobility diminishes the coherence of groups, as well as the intensity of class conflict, it does not eliminate either. Right? So they say that it does not eliminate neither class conflict nor the mobility. Modern education. The education has particularly, what has been the role of modern education in social mobility? The education has particularly created new opportunities, new avenues, new incentives. Education motivates, it gives a motivational platform to initiate and adopt new ideals, practices, behavior patterns, and style of life of higher caste, which have been called sensitization by M.N. Srinivas. He translates and explains the process of sensitization and westernization. The exercise for today for you is find out what is sensitization and westernization as per M.N. Srinivas, the sociologist. The new values, orientation, motivation, behavior patterns, formal relations, individualism, monetized attitude of social status, Western technology acceptance is popular among the people, seen as a result of social mobility. And this indicates towards status upliftment. And it further encourages the migration to places where economic opportunities are better. And this is all being worked, or this is all being supported by education. This is being made possible through education and skills and training. So, opportunities in terms of urban trade, industrial occupations, and jobs in different governments and government concerns in cities are available. What is a positive attitude about it, about social mobility? We have talked about briefly about two necessary for understanding two theories. What is a positive attitude towards education? It leads to socioeconomic mobility among the individuals as well as groups. That means a person who is born in an agricultural family, for example, can crack the IAS exam, can become a district magistrate of a city, and that's a kind of social mobility which he can give to his extended family and immediate family, right? Based on his hard work, based on his education. However, the family has an agricultural background, but now they have better opportunities for the coming generations. Secondly, education needs to change uh, the kind of vision people have for their quality of life. Education helps in that kind of social mobility as well, where people are stationed at a place, but they are working upon a better quality of life. Work life balance, for example, it works towards modifying attitudes, habits, manners. You must be knowing people, or you must be practicing yourself better ways of living, starting from when you wake up. Mood of social living. Third, the education is responsible for intergenerational mobility among the individuals and groups where culture is being transmitted. Social groups are able to maintain their status and the status of their family because they are associated together. Therefore, it can be said that education plays a very important contributory role in mobility of individuals and groups regarding their social position, occupational structure, because as groups we see occupational groups, associations, style of life, quality of life, as I said, habits and manners. The last aspect of the second lecture is social stratification and education. Think about social stratification in connect with social mobility. I'll give you a brief before I start on this. When there is social mobility and people are moving up in the social ladder, think about how society is getting stratified more because heterogeneity is increasing, as we said, right? So think about that. Are we talking about lessening social stratification because of education? But because of education, social mobility is happening, so stratification would be a result. how complex this network is getting developed, how do we work around it. Okay, now what is stratification? Stratification, think about hierarchies in your mind and think about a smaller organization, say a school or say this department. Okay, there are hierarchies in any formal organization. Now connect it with a larger uh, environment, which is a society which has a lot of flexible and porous walls. People keep coming and leaving at will, and there are no obligations as such, defined obligations, but as per the human duties and obligations towards constitutional obligations, etc. There are certain things, ideals, principles, norms which people do, but it is not mandatory. Nobody is watching you. In a society, think about the hierarchies which are invisible but so dominantly existent. So these hierarchical arrangements of groups of people in terms of economic growth, economic wealth, property, political power, prestige, and social honor. These are the criteria of these hierarchies, societal hierarchies. It is felt that social stratification is necessary to maintain social order. So they say that yes, these hierarchies are very essential, they are invisible, but they are very essential to maintain the social order. Otherwise, who's going to look over who? The order is maintained by interdependence. The relationship should be of interdependence of individuals and groups on each other. So say political groups are dependent on social groups, are dependent on educational groups, are dependent on non-formal groups. There is a lot of complex networking of interdependence, which is of course not tangible, but yes, there is. Coming to the theories, we have four theories, and while superficially just touch them, natural superiority. Theory of natural superiority, you must all be familiar with Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection. Based on that theory, we have a theory of social Darwinism. Okay, yes. So, social Darwinism was propagated by Herbert Spencer. Names not necessary to be remembered. It is believed that certain individuals with more merit, more training, better education, better position have better survival levels or better position, society position. Requisite skills or attributes to compete with others, they have better attributes, and they are more visibly seen to rise in that environment, in that ladder of hierarchy. And others not so skilled, maybe they did not get access to better opportunities or avenues, they struggle in comparison to the people who have already risen based on their background, their position, their social position, their hard work, training, merit, etc. So those who are not so skilled are seen as less competitive, which is maybe not true, and they might fail in that race of competitiveness. So more deeper interpretation is required here. It talks about biological base stratification and gender stratification also. That certain discriminations are seen, stratifications are seen made based on races. We know that what was a basis of colonialism, right? That is one example. What could be the gender discrimination, that men are more powerful and women are not that good in sports? Any kind of field where competitiveness is there. So these kinds of discriminations are not just based on the social Darwinism theory, but it also has its aspect in racial discrimination and biological or gender discrimination as well. Second theory is about, again, functionalist theory, which talk about society as supreme, and theory that is more concerned about how society maintains an order and keeps an order functional. So generally the functionalist theorists have tended to share concepts like stability, consensus, status quo. This shows that they're not very pro to changes, pro to questioning, and they base the society's integration based upon stability, consensus, and integration in society based on status quo, which is not pro to questioning or inquisitiveness. Now, they also, you can take an example or analogy of human body. There are various systems in our body which constitute this human body, right? And we need all systems to function. This system needs to be maintained. So we take care of our bodies, and thus our bodies are functioning. Similarly, functionalist theory talks about various small systems in the theory need to function properly, and that functionality of those smaller systems need to be maintained for the functionality, good functionality of a larger society. So this is what they say. And the society's institution, they say, must function properly to maintain stability of the entire social system. Further, certain functional prerequisites must be met if the society is to function effectively. In order, social stratification therefore becomes a tool to see how far it meets these functional prerequisites. And the name associated with this theory is Talbot Parsons. Coming to Marxian theory of stratification, the Marxist perspective generally regard modern society as being divided primarily into two classes, bourgeois and the proletariat, on the basis of property ownership or means of production, ownership of means of production, right? So there is a group who are in minority, and those who are non-owners of property, those who are in majority. And Marx understood classes to be economically determined by the difference between the ownership of means of production, as I said. Class differentiation, therefore, are determined by the modes of production, as per the Marxist theory. So stratification based on the ownership of means of production. And lastly, the Weberian theory, Max Weber, the stratification, he says, is based on three types of social formation: class, status, and power. Class, status, and power. Property differences generate classes, and classes are defined based on economic acquisitions. Property differences. Power differences generate political parties, and prestige differences generate status groupings or honor. So stratification based on class, status, and power. So what does class refers to? Unequal distribution of economic rewards. What does status refers to? Unequal distribution of social honor. Weber also looks at parties, political parties, or groups which are specifically concerned with influencing policies, because education again is seen as a having collateral position in terms of social and political power structures. So it is concerned with influencing policies, the parties, the political parties making decisions, these groups, power groups, in the interest of the membership. So, as per combining everything, as per various sociologists, education, now role of education, as per these theories, education provides a link between the individual and the society. And it provides individual specific skills necessary for the future occupations, which is the most important factor in modern social stratification. So, education in a way is leading to stratification, does it? It is required, but depending on the disparity between how people have acquired their skills and how they are implementing, it becomes a question that does it lead ahead to social stratification? Second question or point, education system is an important mechanism for the selection and allocation of individuals as resources in their future roles in the society. That is also regarded as a ground for proving one's ability, that how capable you are. Coming back to the capabilities and allocation of human resource. So one's ability, and hence selective agency for different statuses according to their abilities. Again, education is helping in, based on the merit, placement of these people as human resource and generating or acquiring a kind of status based on their skills, occupational skills. But yes, it is also leading to stratification. Now, the inequality of educational opportunities is the last point, is a product of social stratification. Because this social stratification becomes so complex that as a chain, or if we can say a vicious chain, a group of people or a class of people and their children might have disparity in educational opportunities, the access to educational opportunities, if education is seen as a product. So even if there were to be subcultural differences between classes, the very fact that people stand at different positions in society, in the class system, will produce inequality of educational opportunities. And here again, we need change management experts. We have I'll discuss one example with you. The education I'm trying to wind up, conclude. The education is the primary generator of social mobility. Think about these sentences which I'm trying to say now. The education is the primary generator of social mobility. Because of education, you move the social ladder up or down in any modern industrial society. And that's what people aspire, right? This relationship is little complex to understand. For instance, the education is the main component in achieving a status in the social class system, on the one hand, and stratification system is the declining factor in the differential access to education. So social mobility creates a situation where social stratification gets created, and that again creates a declining position to educational accessibility. Therefore, the relationship between education and social stratification is very complex and can only be understood in relation to social mobility. When I talk about change management experts, we have students at IDS who are working with certain NGOs to make a change because they have been helped by certain NGOs. We have here Mahesh, who has been working with a foundation called Eklavya, where they are making village children who are first generational learners coming for the first time from their family, and they are apprising them about what courses go in different institutes, how to prepare, what exams come, what is to be studied, etc. So such kind of change management experts we need from young age. Okay, thank you, and we open it for discussion and chit chat session. Yes.